Adolf Hitler's anti-Semitism was planted in his youth. Born in Austria on a lovely spring day in 1889 to a loving and devoted mother, he enjoyed the fine life of a middle-class child. His father, Alois, was demanding and wanted Adolf to study for the Austrian civil service, but at a young age, Adolf was a bit of a rebel and he wanted to be an artist. His father died young in 1903, and that freed Adolf of his father's yoke. He left school in 1905, having only obtained a ninth-grade education. He then followed his artistic ambitions to the capital of Austria, Vienna, but was rejected by the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts in 1907. He then suffered a hard emotional loss the following year when his mother, Clara, died. On his own, Adolf meandered the city streets of Vienna until his funds ran low. He then hit rock bottom and wound up in a homeless shelter. And this is where the first seeds of anti-Semitism were planted. He was still a very, very young and naive teenager. And in a homeless shelter, he met a lot of so-called thinkers. And he listened intently to those who hailed the supremacy of the Aryan race and the inferiority of the Jews, which he came to hate. In 1913, again still a very young man, he left Austria for Munich, Germany, where he volunteered for the army that had just embarked on the greatest war ever fought. He fought bravely in World War I and was wounded twice, but was also decorated, and he found himself full of rage for Germany's defeat, which he blamed the Jews. And he knew then that he wanted to enter the political arena in his chosen fatherland with the mission to save the nation. Germany did not fare well at the Treaty of Versailles, ending World War I. Forced to pay substantial reparations for war damages, the Great Depression only made matters worse. The country was reeling, misfortune and his impoverishment, and Adolf Hitler was able to rise to the political ranks in the 1920s as a member of an obscure party known as the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazis. Hitler promised an end to all misfortunes and impoverishment and would lead Germany back to greatness. He appealed to members of the lower middle class, ruined shopkeepers, poor farmers, unemployed white-collar workers, and disenchanted students. Between 1930 and 1932, the Nazi Party became the largest party in parliament, and a very weak president, Paul von Hindenburg, gave Hitler the most powerful position in Germany, the chancellorship. Once in power, Hitler promised a German Reich, or empire, one that would endure 1,000 years. Once securely in power, the Nazi regime translated racist ideology, especially the notions of racial superiority and racial purity that Hitler outlined in his book Mein Kampf, Mind Struggle, which became the political handbook of the Nazi Party. Hitler believed that a titanic struggle between a superior Aryan race and inferior non-Aryan races, and including most notably the Jews, determined the course of history. Hitler then tried to purify the race. In 1933, the regime initiated a compulsory sterilization program for men and women that the regime determined as having hereditary sicknesses such as manic depression, physical deformities, schizophrenia, blindness. Between 1934 and 1939, more than 30,000 men and women underwent compulsory sterilization. The mania for racial health culminated in a state-sponsored euthanasia, or mercy-killing program that murdered 200,000 men, women, and children between 1939 and 1945. Basically, those who were on the fringes of society, the homeless, and the mentally handicapped. But Hitler saved his worst for the Jews. Immediately after coming into power in 1933, the Nazis initiated systematic measures to suppress Germany's Jewish population. In 1935, the notorious Nuremberg laws deprived German Jews of their citizenship and prohibited marriage and sexual intercourse between Jews and Germans. The Nazis then began to liquidate the wealth of Jews by seizing their assets. The official goal of the Nazi regime was Jewish immigration, Throughout the 1930s, thousands of Jews left Germany. The exodus gained urgency after what became known as the Night of Broken Glass. During the night of November 9th and 10th, 1938, the Nazis arranged for the destruction of thousands of Jewish stores, synagogues, and murdered more than 100 Jews. Things only got worse when Hitler switched to genocidal policies. The Holocaust, as it became known, nearly wiped out the entire Jewish population in Europe. Sometime during 1941, the Nazi leadership committed to the final solution of the Jewish question, which entailed the attempted murder of every Jew living in Europe. At the Wannsee Conference, 15 Nazi bureaucrats agreed to evacuate all Jews from Europe to camps in eastern Poland, where they would be worked to death or exterminated. German forces then rounded up Jews and deported them by rail to specifically constructed concentration camps in occupied Poland. In camps such as Belzec, Treblinka, and Auschwitz, the final solution took on an organized and technologically sophisticated character. Nazi camp personnel subjected victims from all corners of Europe to industrial work, starvation, medical experiments, and outright extermination. The German commandant at Auschwitz, the largest camp, where at least 1 million Jews perished, explained proudly how his camp became the most efficient at killing Jews by using the fast-acting crystallized prussic acid, Zyklon B, as the gassing agent, by enlarging the size of gas chambers, and by lulling victims into thinking they were going through a delusing process. At Auschwitz and elsewhere, the Germans also constructed large crematories to incinerate the bodies of gassed Jews and hide the evidence of their crimes. Even though Jews put up fierce resistance throughout the war, by 1945, approximately 5.7 million Jews had perished in the Holocaust.